Fundamentally, there's things that are outside of our control, but just as fundamentally, there are business principles and practices that have always been important. They just haven't showed up as important when times are different. There's no new technology, there's no new widget, there's no shiny thing that does anything fundamentally different than 100 years ago. So everything has to do with finding enough buyers and sellers that need to transact in real estate to be able to meet your goals. Real estate professionals, welcome back. You're here with Jake and I on the RMG Agent Podcast. We're here to impact, empower, and encourage you in all things real estate, taking care of your clients, taking care of your families, and just being an awesome professional. That's why you're here on a podcast like this. As always, you can go to RMG Agent Podcast. You can get our action guides. You can get all of our past episodes, our webinars, different things that we've done to be able to just pour into you. And then you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and everywhere else that podcasts are found. Please share and like, subscribe, all the different things. It helps us out, helps us continue to push this out and be able to help you. So speaking of helping, we have Jake Bartlett, the epic, awesome, best real estate helper person ever.
Epic. I'm super epic. I am very excited for this episode.
Yeah.
But before we get into this episode, go back and watch the last episode,
Yes.
which is Keep It Simple with our master series, John Walker, who, if you don't know John is one of both of our best friends.
Yeah.
He's a great realtor, takes amazing care of his clients, and he's one of the best people I know.
Just fantastic guy.
Yep.
Yeah.
So if you want to know how to really nurture and take care of your clients such that they become raving fans and send you more business, like John is an example of that.
Yes, he's a database master and he just systematically takes great care of people. You definitely want to listen to that. That's the foundation of your business.
Nice. Also, we are going to do an episode race car themed.
Ooh, yes. Love it.
So our episode today, which is episode 46, is I Just Want to Go Fast.
Yes.
Racing rules for real estate.
Yes, this is our Ricky Bobby episode.
Yes. So what are our three elements?
So in business, we have some really simple principles. And sometimes in some seasons of business, it doesn't matter that much if you abide by the principles, right? So abiding by the rule of gravity doesn't matter so much when I'm standing here on the ground. If I decide that I want to step off a cliff, it really matters, right? Mm-hmm. So when we go from easy times in real estate to kind of our current time where it's very, very challenging, sides are down, there's all kinds of issues changing our industry. Fundamentally, there's things that are outside of our control. But just as fundamentally, there are business principles and practices that have always been important. They just haven't showed up as important when times are different, right?
Yep.
And so I was talking to one of the executives in our company, my business partner, Blake Elder. And he was talking about how in F1 racing, they have, there's only a few manufacturers of the engines and they're all limited to the same amount of thrust, right? Nobody has more power than anybody else. And so what causes a car to be fast or slow has to do with the amount of drag that vehicle creates. It also has to do with the amount of downforce. So we'll talk about those. But really we have these three principles that transfer really, really well over into our real estate businesses. And that is we need to pay attention to how much thrust do we have, how much downforce do we have, and how much drag do we have in our businesses?
Perfect. And this is going to be an episode that may be geared a little more towards organizations, so teams and things like that, or brokerages. The principles will still carry over for individual agents.
Yes.
And this is more so what we deal with on a day-to-day basis, or what you deal with coaching clients and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the first of those is going to be thrust.
Yes. So just fundamentally, of course, if a car or a business doesn't put out enough power, doesn't put out enough thrust, it doesn't really matter what else is going on. And so there's always something in life and in business that has what I like to call primacy, right? It's not just the most important thing; it's the thing that has to come first. And this has to come first in our real estate sales businesses. A lot of us have a tendency to want to tinker on making the car more aerodynamic, making it go faster, making it look better, all of these different things. But the reality is if your power plant is broken, If your engine doesn't put out enough power to be able to go competitively around the track, nothing else matters, right?
I see this a lot with really strong individual agents who try to grow a team.
Yeah.
They don't have the thrust being enough leads to have a team yet.
Yeah, so when we're talking about thrust, we're fundamentally talking about lead generation, right? A lot of agents now are failing out of our business, and it's not because they're not smart enough, and it's not because they don't have the best looking business or any of those things. It has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with the fact that they are not doing enough activities to be able to create the thrust for their business to be able to get around the track. And so if that's you, you should probably listen to this podcast for like another 5 minutes, put it on pause, and then go do something. Because if you're not, there's no new technology, there's no new widget, there's no shiny thing that does anything fundamentally different than 100 years ago. So everything has to do with finding enough buyers and sellers that need to transact in real estate to be able to meet your goals. Whether you do that through a lot of technology or you do that through the most simple means, the reality is being in enough conversation with potential buyers and sellers, it's the only thing that matters. And if you're not having enough of those conversations, that's where you have to put this on pause and you have to just go do something about it.
Yep. And in an organization, when we talk about thrust, we're talking about people, but also specifically some high performance people.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So inside of an organization, we need to have people who have big enough goals, have strong enough missions, right, in their life, or what some people call like their big why, to be able to go do the heavy lifting, right? Having thrust in your business, having thrust in your personal sales business is the hardest thing that you're going to do. And it's the thing that will separate people who are going to succeed from those who are going to fail. People who are going to be competing for the checkered flag versus people who never even get out of the garage. And so when we look at that, it's so easy, like we talked about in other episodes, to get frozen up. And what we really need to encourage people to do is to do more activities. Now, if you're a seasoned agent, you don't have to do as much activity as somebody who's brand new, right? But for the seasoned agent or for the team, the reality is when the market shifts, you may need more power. You may need more thrust to be able to go around the track. And if you've built these habits around, I only do this limited amount of things, there's just this really, really easy way of telling if you're doing enough. Are you making the kind of money that you set out to make? The answer is no. You need more thrust.
Yep.
Doesn't matter if you want to have more power or not, you need it.
Yeah, one of the things you said there, which parallels a team call that we had today, was seasoned agents might have to talk to less people.
Yeah.
But they still have to talk to people.
Yes.
They can't sit back and wait for clients. They still have to talk to people.
I think that's a great thing to look at is seasoned agents that build a great reputation over time do get into the place in easy markets where they actually don't have to do outbound conversations, right? And so then there's some entitlement that can set in to that. And once the entitlement sets into that, you have to be really careful because all of a sudden you're starting to build new habits and you're starting to kind of put yourself in a place to where if you really have to crank the power back up, you may not be willing to do it. And again, it's just this really simple thing is if your personal sales business or your organization is not hitting its goals, you absolutely have to have more thrust.
Yeah, right. I saw a video of an old tractor, had to be one of the first like gas-powered tractors. And to start it up, it actually took a shotgun shell. And they had to wind it up, and then the guy hit the shotgun shell with a hammer to make an explosion, which then kicked over the motor. So if you're a seasoned agent, don't let your business get to the point where you have to hit it with a shotgun shell to be able to get it started.
Yes. Yeah. So the first principle is thrust. And the thing is everybody wants to talk about something other than lead generation, right? It's just not the sexiest thing to talk about. But people who have made peace with talking about lead generation and never wanting to talk about anything else and just let's talk about lead generation again and let's do more lead generation, let's talk about the lead generation that we did, they're not broke. They're not, they're having a harder time in harder markets, but a harder time doesn't mean I'm getting out of the industry. A harder time means I have to do more to be able to get the same, right? That's what it means.
Right. Okay, so then our second principle in this race car themed is downforce.
Downforce. So I've had a few really fast cars over the many years, as it turns out now that I've been alive. I'm getting older. And one time I was driving one of these cars, and it was a Porsche. It was a great car. It was a very fast car, that probably close to 200 miles an hour top speed. And I was down in this area south of Spokane called the Palouse, and I was on this really, really wide road, beautiful, like no cars for miles in any direction, and I just thought, let's go. And I started going fast, and it may or may not have been above the speed limit, but it seemed to me that it was extremely fast. And one of the things I found out is that car had plenty of power to go faster and faster and faster. The problem was that car did not have the kit for being on a racetrack, which creates more downforce. And so at a certain speed that may or may not have been above the speed limit, the car didn't feel like it wanted to go down onto the ground. It felt like it wanted to go up into the air. And I decided that particular speed was time to not go any faster. And it was scary, right? That is not a good feeling to feel like your car wants to become a plane, right? And so the thing that we have to pay attention to here as kind of a next business principle when it comes to real estate is downforce. And downforce is a really interesting thing because this is really in alignment with a lot of what we've been talking about, and that is a move in our industry towards professionalism. Downforce and drag have some similarities. They're both like these aerodynamic principles. Drag, which we'll talk about kind of in depth, holds you back. Downforce glues you down. And so when we look at our businesses, downforce really is the level of professional services that we offer and the things that we do to just really, really tighten up our skills and our level of service. And the reason downforce is really, really important is that we in this current market don't just need our vehicle to go fast in a straight line or our business to go fast in a straight line. It has to go fast around corners because there are corners being thrown out. Is there a week that we don't have to pivot?
No.
All year, it's pivot. It's new corner, harder corner, easier corner, very, very hard corner. And so the only thing that keeps a high-powered vehicle on the track without it going off into the gravel or into the wall is downforce. So what is downforce for us in our businesses? It's the level of professional operation of the company, right? Do we have the meetings that we need to have? Are we having the conversations we need to have? Are we having the accountability that we need to have? And then our services, like what are our finances look like? What are our books look like? Are we paying attention to that? What about our transaction coordination? What about our marketing? What about our consistency when it comes to delivering a high level of service to the client? More than ever, that matters now, and it's going to matter more and more. So if we look at our business and say, hey, we have a lot of thrust, like you mentioned, like a drag car, a dragster, right? A dragster has a lot of thrust. You can't take it around a corner.
No.
Right? So if your real estate team has a lot of thrust, and so maybe it's a little bit sloppy, like it's just, a bunch of sales guys pounding out the phones, right? And your Google reviews are 1 star. You have a downforce issue. You fundamentally have an issue with a level of professionalism that is going to cause your car to not go off the track, right? The further we go into this new real estate world, which I'm really excited about, the more downforce and professionalism is going to matter to be able to keep you in the race.
Yeah, if your sales organization operates like a dragster and every single time something comes up, you have to throw out the parachute to stop, make the corner, and then rethrust, you're going to be miles behind an organization that has the right amount of downforce.
Yeah. So again, we're paying attention to thrust first, but now let's just say, okay, we're doing our job, we're doing that, we're setting our appointments, all that stuff. Now we're going to take a look back, and we're going to take a look at our organization, and we're going to say, okay, the future of real estate, I think, should require us to look at companies outside of real estate. Like, I need to compete with Ritz-Carlton. I need to compete with Porsche, actually, as a company and as a brand. I need to compete with Nordstrom, and and maybe my favorite restaurant, right? And if I look at all of those companies, they have a tremendous amount of downforce, right? It's going to be very, very hard to get a Ritz-Carlton off the track. Like, they know what they're doing. Their professional service is dialed, and it's time for us to take a very a very good look in the hard look in the mirror as an industry and then as a business, right? Because here's one of the dirty secrets about real estate. Everybody's a salesperson, and everybody wants to tell you that their crap doesn't stink.
Right.
But I can't tell you how many real estate agents that I've heard tell me all about like how great they are, all this stuff, and then you peek behind the curtain and it's like, man, that is all in your head. Like that's the vision of who you want to be, but you actually don't have the structures and the systems inside of your company to make that a reality. And so now it's time to bring the vision, because I don't know any real estate agents that want to suck and do a horrible job. But the difference between sucking and doing a horrible job and truly doing a great job is being able to build the systems and the structure that really glue that car to the ground.
Yeah, and if we talk about an organization like a real estate team or real estate organization, the leader is going to have to be the one that puts those structures and systems and continues to look down the track and see the corners that are coming and putting the downforce on the business to make it work. Because if they're not, you can create a really fun atmosphere. You can project an outward image of everything's great.
Yeah. And
like you said, behind the curtain, things could be crazy and your agents could be suffering.
Yeah, and the reality is business is full of people and it's messy. And so there are times, when I look at our business, I'm like, hey, our business runs really well. And then you watch the car get really loose in a corner. You're like, what was that? Right? And well, we got to go fix that.
Yep. Okay, so our last thing, and we're going to spend some time on this, is drag.
Yes. Okay, so there's different kinds of drag that happen in a race car, and there's different kinds of drag that happen in a business. So in a race car, there's really two kinds of drag. One's aerodynamic drag, right? So that is the drag from the wind going over the car, and the other one's mechanical drag. And and out of those two, there's one thing that we really want to avoid. And this is, if you're taking notes, write this down. It's parasitic drag. So the act of creating downforce, the act of creating systems and structures and accountability and all that stuff in a company to glue it to the ground creates some drag. Right? If you're going to be more and more professional, then you're going to have to deal with the amount of drag that creates. The issue is that when we go from creating downforce that creates some level of drag in the organization to building out too much structure or lots of redundancies or things that AI could do, but now we have people doing them, or things that one person can do, but 5 people are doing, we create parasitic drag. And we create this drag that creates no function. It doesn't increase our thrust, and it doesn't increase our downforce. It just flat out slows us down. Right? And so that happens aerodynamically, right, from the wind, and it also happens mechanically, which is inside the drivetrain. And this would actually be more like the systems and structures. So when an engine produces power or thrust, it measures differently at the crankshaft at the back of the engine. I know this is super geeky, but hopefully you care. So it creates one power output number at the crank, and it creates a different power output number at the rear tires by the time that thrust or that power gets to the pavement. And the difference between these two measurements are the mechanical drag, right? For me to be able to get my thrust, right, my lead generation efforts to a closing table, there are things there that create drag. Right? So if I'm going to do a great job with my database, I'm going to lead generate, and I'm going to log my conversations, and I'm going to put into my system when I'm going to connect with this person next and what the next steps are. All of those things are mechanical drag, right? If it's mechanical drag that actually gets the power to the pavement, it works. It's great. That's fine. It's a part of doing business. If that system or that process is overly complicated, overly hard, takes too much time, now I have parasitic drag inside of that. And so our job as business owners is to scratch our head and say, okay, where are our systems and our structures clunky? Where is there 3 steps when there should be 1? And the list goes on and on. And the reason we need to pay attention to this is a couple things. One is it slows us down. But the second thing is it costs us a lot of additional money. One of the biggest places that drag shows up inside of an organization are pet projects and pet things, right? Like things that, man, I just really like this. I know that nobody uses it, but one day, hopefully, maybe somebody will use it, and then we have it. Oh, that creates a lot of drag, right?
Yeah, when I ran my organization, I think at one point I was paying for 3 CRMs because I didn't like each one of them.
Right.
Right? Like I'd try it for a little bit and I had a contract, but I didn't like it. So then I'd go to the next one. And it was kind of that pet project of like, I'm going to find the perfect one. I'm going to tell you guys, the perfect one does not exist.
Doesn't exist.
So one of the things I look at is organizational size. So organizational size is something that it falls into that aerodynamic category, right? So you can see a lean, mean, super light organization that does a lot of business, right?
Yes. Yeah.
You've got high producing agents. You have the ability to continue to make them happy, continue to create opportunities for them. And then I see organizations that have a lot of agents and it looks like their agents are starved for sales because they may be too big.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts about that?
So if your organizationally, like when it comes to your hub, your core, your support system is bloated and has too many people and too many systems, that's mechanical drag in your company. And you've got to have some hard conversations and maybe make some tough decisions. And those decisions, I think, should start with systems and things that we are paying for that we're not using or are not efficient and not effective. And then the second layer is people. Do we have too many people in the organization for the amount of business that we're doing? That is a gut punch. That is just an absolute horrible conversation that all leaders have to have at some point. But we want to start with the things that cost us money, don't cost us, I won't say don't cost us relationships, but there is a relational cost to doing that, right? When it comes to the agent population, that's going to be your aerodynamic drag, right? So as a company, we are providing all of these opportunities, all of the systems, all of the support structure from the from the thrust of the company, and then it goes out to the agents. And some agents take that thrust and they increase the thrust, and they take the downforce and they keep that thing on the track and they're ripping, right? And with us, they're just cranking. And then there's some agents that don't do that at all. And they create drag in the organization. They create personal drag, but they create drag in the organization. And so the hard thing going forward in real estate is that if we look at 1.7 million real estate agents, let's say that number over the next 2 or 3 years shrinks to 900,000 or 1 million real estate professionals, right?
Maybe less.
Then all of a sudden we look at that and we have to say, you know what? An organization can only afford to create the downforce and to create the thrust for people who are going to help us get that car around the track fast. Somebody that actually just is parasitic drag because they are squandering the opportunities, they're not doing what they need to do. The hard truth is maybe 4 or 5 years ago you could afford to have that person linger. But less and less can you afford to have that person linger. And the reason is that every seat in an office inside of an organization costs money. It's not just variable costs. It's actually fixed costs. And people who don't own a real estate business don't really think about this because the initial thought is something like, well, if I list a property, it's like the cost of photos and a sign. That's not much. But the reality is that there's all of these layers of costs that have to be loaded onto each transaction, right? If you're going to run an organization. So you have a cost of opportunities lost. How many opportunities did I have to provide before that person was able to take advantage of an opportunity? We have the costs of insurance. We have the costs of keeping the lights on. We have the costs of all of the different people that make up, the mechanical system of our company and create the downforce. And the total cost of that has to then be divided across all of the agents and all the transactions. So you can literally have somebody that costs you $1,000 a month and brings in $0, right? You take that and you have 10 of those people, you have $10,000 a month in kind of a combination of fixed costs and opportunity loss that's sitting there. That's a lot of drag. You might have afforded it before because you didn't need a car that had lots of thrust and you didn't need a car that had lots of downforce and was great aerodynamically to make it 5 years ago. That's not true anymore, and it's not going to be true in the future.
Yeah, and if we take this back to like the individual agents, when we talk about going from 1.7 to 1 million, it's also going to be drag that causes those people to get out of the business because they aren't moving fast enough. They aren't taking away the things that are causing them to slow down, and say all of a sudden commissions compression happens, which is likely to happen. Now they're making less per transaction, and to make the money that they need to do, they need to move faster and they need to do more, and that drag is what's going to keep them from staying in the business.
Yeah, it's exactly right. So if somebody, and this may or may not happen in our industry, but if somebody to make their living needs to sell 10 homes and now it's 30 homes, they can't wrap their mind around that, and they think that that's unfair, and they throw a tantrum. Okay, well, you're getting out of the industry. You're going to another industry, by the way, that's already figured out how to pay you, and you're going to go work for less, and you may actually do the work that you should have done in real estate. But if that happens, it's just a truth. It's just a reality, right? If you need to go from 10 to 30 to make the same amount of money, if you can increase your thrust, and if you can increase your downforce, you can actually do those 30 transactions in less time than it took you to do 10.
Yep.
But you got to wrap your head around that.
Yep. It's a mindset thing.
It absolutely is.
Yep. All right. So to recap this, we've got thrust, downforce, and drag. Those are the racing rules for real estate.
Yes.
So if you had to tell somebody, obviously the first and foremost important thing in there is going to be thrust. If you don't have enough, you need more.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then going into the downforce, where should somebody look, or an organization look, for some tips, tricks, anything like that? Yeah.
So when you look at your organization and you look at the downforce that you create, I would ask yourself the question, are we systematically creating consumer experiences that are great in a way that economically works, right? If you can do that and you can pivot, right? When the market shifts, you have the right people and the right systems that don't have to be completely retooled and redone, you're in a good place.
Okay, so if somebody's got the right amount of thrust, they've got good downforce, they're still struggling with drag, what should they do?
You potentially have too many people in your organization. And that could be too many people inside of the core of your organization. You have 10 people that are, doing the work of 6, right? As opposed to 6 that are doing the work of 10.
Yeah, this becomes a interesting, fun equation when you realize that your top 3 or 4 agents are doing the same amount of business as your next 6.
Yeah.
And if you gave the amount of opportunities for your top 3 or 4, they would do twice as much business than the other.
Yeah. So you have, and we'll just say it this way: every real estate business right now in existence needs more thrust. It needs more downforce. Right, it has to get better when it comes to its professionalism, and it has drag. It has drag inside the core operations of the organization, and it has drag with agents that are underperforming and have no future desire to perform at a high level.
Perfect. All right. So that was a fun one.
Yeah.
I learned more.
The cars were fun. The other conversation, not so much.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I didn't know you knew so much about cars. So
I love cars.
Nice. All right. Thanks for joining us today, guys. As always, guys, we are here to impact, empower, and encourage you in your real estate business and in your lives.
All right, guys. Time to go fast.